Welcome back. We're still watching Smart Money on CNBC-TV18. I'm in conversation with Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO at Edelweiss Mutual Fund, and we're here to talk about why this could be India's decade. Now, we were talking about some sectors and themes that you can look at, and one space that has really come into the limelight in the last couple of months is defense, right?
Yeah.
You're bullish on that sector, and you do talk about how the Indian government is spending $77 billion annually in this space, and perhaps that could be on the conservative side.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the story here.
So I think defense is something that I have personally been very interested. My dad was a diplomat for many years, and I remember one of the conversations in the household is that India's defense needs are going to grow. We are substantially under budgeted in defense versus the US or versus the China. And if you look at a few years ago, India actually stood as one of the largest importers of defense equipment. And I don't think anyone can be the world's third largest economy and keep importing planes from France or wherever it is. So, at some point, this push towards indigenization happened. And now you see a number of companies in the space, without taking names, actually becoming meaningful market share players in defense, having order books that are 15 to 20 years out full. I mean, when you go on earnings calls and you ask them about growth prospects, they're coming back and telling you, my order book is full for 20 years. And you see this government push towards indigenization. So in our report, we mentioned that if you look at the defense budget of this year, about 75% of it is allocated for indigenous purchases. And given our history of being a large importer, I think this is incredible. Defense exports are already a couple of billion. I think they will hit 5-6 billion in the next couple of years. Because if you want to be a meaningful sized economy, there is no way you can be dependent. You have to be Atmanirbhar on defense.
Absolutely. And some of these companies like, say, an HAL, right? I mean, they are large players in the global market, and there's still a lot more scope to go. Got it. Manufacturing. That's a theme that I think it's a consensus view. Do you think it's become a little bit of an overcrowded trade? And what is the big story here in the next decade?
So our fund house has been bullish on the whole manufacturing side of the economy for the last 3-4 years. So I don't know, and I think now it is becoming an increasingly consensus view. And again, I always say India has a really interesting manufacturing history, because if you go back to one era, we were actually 1/4 of the world's manufacturing back in the 1600s. And then we went through a phase where there was no manufacturing. I think a couple of things are working for manufacturing. One is the tax change that happened a few years ago for new manufacturing. The second is, I think we've always had things like Make in India, but PLI has given people an incentive to manufacture at scale. And I think that success you've seen in mobile phones, to some extent, textiles, pharma, many other chemicals. And I think you will continue to see that. The other reason I'm so optimistic about PLI is I think PLI has had a tremendous role in job creation, including, by the way, bringing women into the workforce. So some interesting thoughts there. And I think the third push for manufacturing is labor cost. I mean, finally, our labor cost is about 15% of China. So you take tax, you take reforms, and you take this coming together, I think you're in very good shape. India Inc.'s balance sheets are also in better shape today. Capacity utilization is very, very high. So I think there's space to expand.
So manufacturing is a big umbrella. It's an umbrella, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of sectors under it.
Yeah.
Which are the ones that you're most bullish on?
So one that we already talked defense. Another one that we've really been talking about is EMS, or electronic manufacturing. And that has so many applications, and I think it also becomes a very meaningful export story as well.
Okay, the EMS space, and a lot of these stocks have given great returns to shareholders as well. Technology, right? That as a sector has grown tremendously over the last many years. The question is, of course, there are some hurdles as well in this space now, but is there more to go?
So I think tech is, by the way, we've been discussing valuations, Sonia. Tech is one space where I don't think valuations have run up as much because after COVID and then sort of the interest rate hike, you saw tech companies really go through a tough run. So tech is one space that has not caught up with the market. So in fact, we think if you have to do tech, probably timing is very good from a tech point of view. I think tech in India has really evolved. Not many people would know that we now do about 200 billion in tech exports, which is incidentally larger than Saudi Arabia's crude oil exports.
Oh, wow.
And when you benchmark it that way, you realize how big our IT services industry has become, and the fact that it's only done that in 40 years, because effectively in 1980, the size of the export pie was nothing. I also think India is moving up value addition on the tech curve. So you've gone from being the back office to the rest of the world to hardware to e-commerce, and now you will have a meaningful AI and analytics play. So I think tech is a large industry that is also moving up the value chain.
So that stat really stayed with me. $200 billion is India's tech exports,
It's
and much higher than Saudi Arabia's oil exports.
Yeah,
which is how much?
About 170 billion. I mean, we crossed this a few years ago. And it's weird to compare tech and oil, but it's just to give you a perspective on how large tech as an industry has become. I still think if you look at the tech weight in our indices compared to a market like the US, it's much less. I mean, in the US, the top 10 companies, probably 7 out of them are tech companies. So tech can become an even bigger part of India's economy and market.
Okay, well, those are all the sectors that you need to be looking at, but let's curb our enthusiasm a little bit, right? Because generally, when euphoria sets in, you tend to get carried away. Where are the caution points now in the market, and what's your outlook for 2024?
So we think it's a year of transitions, which is an interesting year. I think last year we said the first half of the market would be a tricky one and the second half would be good. This year it is a year of transitions. You're transitioning from high interest rates to low interest rates. You have elections in 2 major economies of the world, the US and India, later in the UK. So you will have complex geopolitical nuances, and mid caps and small caps have in particular run up meaningfully in the last year. So this is a year of transitions when conversations change. I think we're telling people 2 things. One is to have more moderate expectations. I have seen in capital markets that particularly when you have these 30-40% mid-cap rallies and small-cap rallies, people's expectations really go through the roof and they're often disappointed, especially new investors. The second is to approach investing with what we call a middle path. So there's also a temptation that, oh, a particular segment has done well, let's jump to fixed income, let's jump to large caps. And we're saying stay in the middle. If you really have to capture India as a decadal opportunity, which is what we've talked about, the approach needs to be more balanced. It needs to be more multi-cap, because if your IT and banking leaders are found in large cap, all your industrials and manufacturing leaders are found in mid and small cap. And we talked about the opportunity in financial services. Most listed AMCs, exchanges, depositories, capital markets companies are in that segment. So the approach really has to be a lot more middle path in nature.
All right, well, we would have loved to carry on, and I think we'll have a larger discussion on another day. But for now, thank you so much, Radhika, for joining us, and Happy New Year once again to you.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Okay, with that, it's curtains down on this special edition of Smart Money. Thanks a lot for watching.